Hey everybody, this is Chris with Overclockers Club, and I forgot what time it is. Well, it's memory time. Yes, here we are again with some cool memory. This is some Corsair. We got a couple of 16 gigabyte sticks for a total of 32, 6800 megahertz. This is the Vengeance RGB DDR5 Intel XMP Ready. So there's the part number for this particular kit, but I'll get the information pulled up on the Corsair website. But before we do that, let's take a look at what's inside the box. Okay, looks like that's it. Safety and compliance information. And that is some tiny print. If you're interested in reading that, it'll take a magnifying glass. All right, let's get this kit open. And before I actually handle the memory, since it is winter time here and the humidity is low, even though I try to make sure I run a humidifier, I try to make sure I always wear my anti-static strap, and it is grounded to the frame over here on my system to reduce the chances of any stray static electricity, which we don't want because that's bad, of course, for electronic components. So I always try to make sure when the humidity is low to wear my strap. Now in the summer when there's lots of humidity, that's usually not that big of a deal, but anyway, these straps, you can pick these up. These things are, I don't know, $5, $6, $7 on Amazon. They're pretty inexpensive and they detach there, but worthwhile investment. Okay, so these are the modules here. If I can get them to pop out. There we go. And like I said, when I get the website information pulled up, we'll look at all the different flavors and variations that these come in. So if you can see right there, we've got the information for this particular kit. 32, there's the part number. Okay, now looking at the front, we've got our RGB strip across the top. We got some pretty good size, thick aluminum heat spreaders there. And then we've actually got a little protective cover on the front there. That's nice to keep that from getting scratched up. It looks sort of like a brushed surface. I don't know if that's a sticker or if that's a... Yeah, that might just be a sticker. It has a metallic appearance, but that would add a lot of cost if you actually made that out of metal. Unnecessary cost. So there we go. Oh, it's got the little Corsair logo on the top. And the next thing I'll do is I'll go ahead and we'll get this installed on the motherboard, powered up, and then I'll walk through some of the steps in the BIOS to enable the XMP mode on this memory. And then we'll look at the RGB effects, which should be through the iCUE software. And we'll run through all of the benchmarks, which will test the performance in the synthetic benchmarks and a few gaming benchmarks to see. What I like to do is look for any performance gains with higher speed memory. See if you really gain anything and see if it's worth spending the extra money, or if you're better off investing in more memory, more capacity rather than speed if your budget is limited. All right, so we've got those two modules seated. Let's get it powered up. Now the system will automatically let me know that my memory has changed. which then gives you a message. So hit F1, that'll bump me into the BIOS. And we can play around. Now, it had a little trouble booting with 2 sticks, so I'll go ahead and just try it with 1. We'll get our settings adjusted, and then I'll put the second stick back in. Sometimes first time boot will give you some weird results. Okay, so now we are ready to, I will put this into XMP1 mode. Now it shows that there's a 2 and 3, but they're grayed out, so I don't know if that's because I only have 1 stick in there. I'll go ahead and save it, save the BIOS with XMP1, that setting enabled. Now the other 2 down here, these are for like if you had an AMD board. They've got something called iExpo. That's typically what this lower section is for, although it doesn't say iExpo down here, which is different from what I've seen with other memory kits. But I'll go ahead and enable this. We'll save our settings, reboot. Yeah, it looks good, and then we will try to get the second stick in there. And it's not unusual on that first boot to have a misfire there, so it's coming up here. There we go. All right, so now let me shut it down and I'll get the second module in there. Okay, so we got that shut down. All right, and sometimes it's just the motherboard being weird. I don't know why it does that sometimes. Again, I got my ESD strap on there while I'm handling the memory. And let's get that in there. Now hopefully we don't have any issues. All right, let's see what happens. Now you can see the little, that's a little hard to see with some wires in the way. But usually what happens is your motherboard has to learn how the new memory profiles work. So it takes a couple of reboots usually. And once it figures out, once it learns that it's got the new memory in there and how to apply all the settings, it usually boots right up. Okay, so now it does detect that we've got a memory change, which we do. Hit the F1. But it's good that we are booting to this point, so I'm pretty sure we won't have any issues moving forward. Disconnect my strap. Okay, so again, we don't have XMP 2 or 3. We do have 1. So we will enable that. And if we look over here on our settings, let me scroll down. Here are your DRAM settings. So to get the most out of your system, you do want to enable your XMP. That's what gets you your advertised speed. If you don't run your XMP, let's see, let me scroll down a little bit here. Okay, here's the memory Z. Shows the 2 different modules. Okay, so here are the specifications. If you don't run XMP, you will get 4800 DDR5 4800 speeds, and if you enable the XMP, that's where you get your 6800. So it's a significant difference. And these are all your timings here for this particular setting here on XMP1. So I'll go ahead and reboot, and we should get both modules up and running, and it is coming back up. Now, full disclosure, when I got this memory kit a couple of weeks ago, I opened it up and fired it up on this motherboard just to make sure everything worked. In case there was an issue, I could get back to Corsair right away. And it fired up with both of these modules, and I put it in XMP1 mode, and it worked just fine on the first try. So I don't know why I had a little bit of an issue here. Again, motherboards and memory sometimes do weird things. Okay, so that fired up. No problems. What I like to do is get into my CPU-Z and then just sort of look at the specifications and what's going on, make sure everything is doing what it is supposed to, and everything looks pretty good here. I don't see any issues. Okay, so everything is up and running. We'll go ahead and run some synthetic and some gaming benchmarks with the XMP1 enabled, and then we'll compare those numbers to any of the other XMP modes that are available, if any. I still need to go into the BIOS and see if those other two that were grayed out are now active. And then we'll wrap it up with looking at the iCUE software and the RGB control. Okay, so I ran the synthetic and gaming benchmarks with the XMP 1 profile selected, and with both sticks of memory in there, as you can see, it doesn't seem to have any effect on these other two XMP modes that are just grayed out. So it looks like you either have XMP 1 enabled or you don't, and that's it. And that's fine. So what I'll do next is disable the XMP completely, which will bring our clock speed, our DDR speed, down to like 4800 megahertz. And there's no reason you really want to run it in that mode, but I'll just do it to show you the difference in the benchmarks so you can see why it's important to run with XMP enabled. Okay, so let's reboot with XMP disabled. Yes, and rerun the benchmarks. Okay, so we rebooted with the XMP disabled, and we're no longer running at the 6800, we're running at 4800. And the numbers are coming back, of course, much slower compared to the first run here. So I'll go ahead and get these populated, and I'll run the rest of the benchmarks. Again, this is just to show you how important it is to make sure your XMP is enabled. And here we have the synthetic and some of the gaming benchmarks. So what we've got here is we've got 4 different sets of memory that I've tested. We've got Kingston Fury Beast at 5200, Mushkin at 5600, Team Group at 6000, and then the Corsair that we have today at 6800. So it's not really apples to apples because we don't have the same speeds for each memory kit. But this really does show how it scales for certain things and how memory speed really has a minimal effect. So if we look at our XMP1, this here is XMP disabled since we don't have another XMP mode. The Team Group, we did have an XMP1 and an XMP2. The Mushkin, we had an XMP1 and no other options, so it is disabled. And then the Kingston Fury Beast actually had an XMP1 and an XMP2. So when we compare the numbers, you can see, and really for gaming, if we look at, oh, I'm sorry, down here, the Borderlands 3 and then the F122, the racing game, you can see there's not much difference here whether XMP1 is enabled or not. Same thing with F122, and if we look at the other memory kits, it's really about the same. And what that means is the games are GPU bound and not memory bound, which is not really a surprise. So your synthetic benchmarks here is where we will see a little bit of a difference. Of course, the faster the memory, the better the performance, generally speaking. But again, there aren't any huge differences unless we get down into the ATA 64, the cache and memory benchmarks, and there are some pretty good jumps as we move up the speed ladder here over to the 6800. We do have the highest numbers here with the 6800. Again, not really a surprise. So the takeaway for me on all of my testing is that the speed makes a difference, but not enough to really make a difference that you would notice. Are you going to pick up a few frames per second? In certain games, yeah, some more than others, but for the most part, your games are going to be CPU and GPU bound, actually GPU bound more than anything. So you would want to invest in a good GPU. But when it comes to memory, most people don't have an unlimited budget. If you do, then of course get the fastest memory that you can at the largest capacity. But most people have a budget and you want to stay within your budget, so you're looking at capacity versus speed. And for me, I would go towards the capacity. I would favor capacity over speed if I have a certain amount of money in a budget range that I need to stay within. And on the Corsair website, if you click on PC components up here and then over to memory, and we look at what they say about memory, and they sort of cover what I was just talking about in terms of the speed improvements. So what they've got here, they're looking at DDR5 4800 to DDR5 7200. So that's a pretty big swing between the slower speed memory and the high end there. Of course, you'll see some pretty noticeable improvements when you make a jump from the two speeds, from the 4800 to the 7200. You've got up to 17%. Now, if you're in between here, let's just say you're going from 6800 to 7200, your jump will not be anywhere near this noticeable. So like I said, kind of takes me back to the capacity versus speed. If you're down here at the 4800, yeah, you're going to notice a difference if you want to put your money into the higher speed memory. But if the jump is smaller, then like I said, I would push for capacity. Now, one thing that is important is you want to make sure that the memory that you select is compatible with your system. And it used to be in the owner's manual, you would have a QVL list, which was a qualified vendor list. And it's basically a listing of all the memory that the manufacturer has tested, and they guarantee that it will work with that motherboard, because not all memory plays nicely with every single motherboard out there. A lot of times they come out with faster memory and you need to do a BIOS update before your motherboard will work with it. But they have a nice area here that you can click on, Memory Finder, and then you can select your motherboard and your chipset, and it will give you a list of the memory that is compatible with that system. So it takes a lot of the guesswork out for you. So for example, I clicked on Find by Motherboard, MSI, MPG, Z790 Carbon Wi-Fi, and there are 5 pages of different memory kits here that you can choose from. And they're different price ranges, different models, different capacities. So you could spend a fair amount of time scrolling through there. But again, that takes the guesswork out of which kit works with your particular system. And the next thing we'll look at are the RGB effects here with the iCUE software. Okay, I thought I had the iCUE software installed, but apparently I did not. So I will go ahead and get that installed. And while it's doing that, I want to talk about the other software I have here. This is through the MSI Center. This is the Mystic Light software that runs from the motherboard. And one thing we need to do, let's see, Mystic Light, is we need to disable Mystic Light, because what can happen is if you've got multiple software packages trying to, let's see, is that right? Yeah. If you've got multiple software packages trying to access and control your LEDs or your LED effects on different accessories, what can happen is, let's see, is go into the Mystic Light controls. So we've got settings and controls. So Mystic Light will overwrite third-party RGB software. So we want to disable that. I'll turn it back on. I want to show you here. You can turn Mystic Light off, but it will still be enabled when you turn the motherboard on. But if we come over here to the Mystic Light settings, we can just completely keep it from firing up with the system. Because like I said, multiple software packages will sometimes fight each other and weird things can happen. So it looks like we're all installed. I need to restart the system, so I will do that here and we'll be back in a moment. Okay, the system is rebooted. I fired up the iCUE software. Now it will go through and detect any other iCUE compatible Corsair components, and we can look at firmware updates and all that good stuff. Now it's asking me, okay, so this program here, LED Keeper 2, is from MSI. That's part of the Mystic Light software package. And to make sure that this doesn't cause any problems, I'm going to go ahead and block it. I may just go ahead and actually uninstall it for now, just to guarantee that it doesn't cause any problems. So now I'll fool around here with the iCUE software. Okay, so I could easily spend a half an hour or more talking about all the things that iCUE can do, but basically when you fire it up, it checks your system out to see what iCUE compatible components from Corsair are on your system. Now, I only have the Vengeance memory here from Corsair on this particular system, so it only picks up the Vengeance memory. But you can also look at your sensors and keep track of what's going on with your system. So it doesn't just control the RGB. You got a dashboard here, so you can get right in there and get all kinds of details about what's going on with your system. So there's a little more going on. There's something called murals here that you can select, and you get these different effects, and you can see this is your this is a representation of your memory modules, and as these colors pass through, it's a little hard to tell here unless I'm in the dark, but you can see they're sort of synchronized with what's happening on the screen. So that's a cool thing there from Corsair. We've got different effects. So I believe you can drag these around maybe. Yeah, so that they are in different parts of the screen, so different effects are moving through them at different times. It's more impressive when you've got other iCUE components on your system. Now, for example, this is a different system, and I've got other Corsair components. You can see it's picking up the cooler. I've got a lighting node, and I've got some memory on there. So all of these things are synchronized. This is a DDR4 system, but all of the effects are synchronized there. It's hard to tell with all the reflection in the glass, but you get the idea of what iCUE can do. It sort of gives you a way to control and synchronize all of your effects through one software package. So the thing to keep in mind when you're using your software to control your RGB effects, sometimes different software packages do not play well together, and they will fight each other, and you'll get some really weird things going on with your RGB effects. So it's best to figure out which one is the best for your system and just use one system for your LED and RGB control. Okay, I'm going to go back to the iCUE software here in just a moment, but I do want to talk about overclocking. And this is my other test system here. This is a DDR4 motherboard. Anyway, you can go into your motherboard BIOS, and you can drill down and get into your settings, all the timings for your memory, and you can make adjustments, reboot the system, and if it reboots, then you can start doing some stress testing to make sure that you have a good solid overclock on your memory. If you don't, you'll know, because you'll get blue screens and you'll have problems. So what I want to show here is within the iCUE software, and I almost forgot to go over this, you can also make changes to the settings for your memory within the software, just like you would do in the BIOS. So you come over here to Performance Manager. I'm on the home section. Performance Manager, and it brings up this screen. You can see we can look at the temperature of the modules. That's kind of neat. You can look at the cooling effects. Actually, there's a cooling tab here that lets you monitor that. But anyway, we go back to the Performance Manager. You can see all of the settings here, and these are the same settings that you would see within the BIOS. And these are all grayed out, so I can't make any changes. This is Profile 1, but you hit the plus and you create a new profile, which I already did. And when you select that, now all of these settings are selectable, and I can make changes. Now, if you don't know what you're doing, you've never done any overclocking with your memory, you have to be careful, because you can't just randomly change numbers. Your system won't boot. But you can make adjustments to these if you're comfortable with memory overclocking, or you've done that before. Then you can save these and then enable them so that your system will boot up with your new memory settings. Now, my recommendation, if you've never done anything like that, you're not comfortable with it, I would just enable the XMP profile within the BIOS and leave it at that for the best performance and the best stability of your memory. So we'll talk about pricing here. Again, we're back on the Corsair website, and they've got a nice way to go in and pick all of the different options. And I think I've got the right memory selected here, because there's so many options it can be a little confusing. So we've got a 32 gigabyte kit, we've got the right speed 6800, we've got the right cast latency, we're at CL32, and with all of that, I've got $159 for this kit. Tried to find it on Amazon, and Amazon doesn't quite have the breakdown that we've got here. But you know, I think that's a pretty decent price. It's really come down since DDR5 first came out. Okay, so overall I like the memory. It seems to function all right, other than that little hiccup I had on that boot. But like I said, when I first fired it up, when I first got it, it fired up just fine on XMP mode. And I've been bouncing back and forth between XMP enabled and disabled, and no problems at all. So I'm not sure what that little hiccup was. But like I said, value-wise, considering where XMP, or not XMP, DDR5 memory was when it first came out, the pricing has come down considerably, much more affordable. And oh hey, we'll be checking this out next. So if you're in the market for a solid-state drive, we'll get that reviewed. The iCUE software, again, it's fun to play with. It's more fun if you've got more components on your system. Of course, here we just have the memory, but it's still fun to play with. So I would give this the Overclockers Club Gold Award. This is Chris with Overclockers Club. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe and come back for this review.